Welcome into Reiter's Block from New York City. I'm your host, Bill Reiter. Gary Parrish is going to swing by the show, give us some insight on college hoops. Joe Flacco is now a Denver Bronco. And we're going to get into what is wrong with Major League Baseball and its free agency system starting right now. Something is seriously broken in the world of Major League Baseball. Pitchers and catchers have already reported, and within the next 3 or 4 days, every major leaguer in the country will be at spring training getting ready for their seasons, or I should say, every major leaguer who knows where they're playing, because two of the biggest free agents, not just this year, but in several years, still have no idea what team they'll be competing for this season. Manny Machado and Bryce Harper remain unsigned. Are they going west? Are they going east? Yankees, Padres, Giants, Dodgers? We don't know, which is crazy, even if it was just, an above average player, an above replacement level guy. But these guys are studs. Let's start with Manny Machado, the third baseman, most recently with the Dodgers, long time in Baltimore. I could throw a lot of stats at you. I'll just remind you last season. The dude hit almost 300. He had 37 home runs. He drove in 107 guys, scored 84 runs, and he can steal a base or two at 14. Yes, he doesn't hustle. Yes, he let that be known. But there's no getting around the fact that Machado is massively talented in a profession where talented players are, the key to winning baseball games. And as good as Machado is, Bryce Harper, at least for me, is the prize of this free agency class. Bryce Harper's still a young dude. But look at his batting average. Last year, Harper's on-base percentage almost 400. The dude had a ton of home runs, drove in 100, scored 103 runs, stole 13 bases, and I think this is important, he's an interesting guy. He's a big personality. He'll fill seats, he'll sell jerseys. There's obviously a problem in Major League Baseball when this kind of talent is still on the market. When the system in place, the CBA, the supply and demand, the decision-making that GMs and owners are working through, leave guys like Machado and Harper without a job, without a team, in their prime, days before they should be reporting to their respective clubs if they knew what those clubs were. And remember, this isn't new. This happened last year and the years before. A few examples for you. Nelson Cruz didn't sign until February 24th, 2014. Dexter Fowler, when that was still, kind of an interesting guy, didn't sign until February 25th, 2016. Justin Turner with the Dodgers, who was a huge part of their success the last few years, didn't sign until early February of 2014. And last year, J.D. Martinez on February 26th, an important date because it's the one-year anniversary of CBS Sports HQ launching, did not have a job. It was with the Red Sox until late in the process, well beyond the process to work itself out. And you and I know how that worked out. J.D. Martinez, pretty important piece of that Boston Red Sox team. It's so obviously a problem. It's so ridiculous to guys that are still playing that even Justin Verlander is calling out Major League Baseball and the system. He did it in a tweet that is worth repeating because it states the obvious and what a lot of guys around baseball are thinking. Something here doesn't add up. Something here doesn't make sense. Question marks abound. So what's going on? What's the real deal? What's the real situation? If you talk to folks around Major League Baseball in front offices, if you hear from Robert Manfred when he decides to speak on the issue, they'll just tell you this is what the market has to bear. But one longtime, well-known former player, still an active part of the Major League Baseball landscape, texted me the following today, and he's a candid guy, and he's not a guy that gives into hyperbole. Quote, collusion and teams want to get rid of players 32 or older so they can break the union next CBA. Players already prepared to not play that 22 season. Obviously, that doesn't, end quote. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Machado and Harper, but he's talking about a culture, as the text went on, in which the owners aren't dealing in good faith because they have a different agenda. He continues in another text, quote, baseball has done an incredibly poor job not piggybacking on great World Series wins by the Cubs in 16, the Astros in 17. With so much parity, teams make more money when they keep money and not spend it on players, but don't see the lasting damage it will have, end quote. This is a real problem. This is a real crisis for Major League Baseball. they're eating their own tail. They're cannibalizing their own success. And as we mentioned with the Verlander situation, he's not alone. And this is true for a lot of free agents, but Machado and Harper point to the absolute example. One of the things with baseball, certainly different in the NFL and to a certain extent the NBA, is that if you're the Yankees or you're the Cubs or you're the Dodgers, you're able to go out there and outspend markets in places like Kansas City and Milwaukee and Minnesota and try and run away with an opportunity to get as many wins as you can because you've got the financial flexibility to do it. But we're seeing teams go another direction. The Dodgers had the highest payroll in the history of baseball several years ago, and one of the reasons that Andrew Friedman came in, the president of operations, was to cut down payroll. The Houston Astros are not in a small market, but they went with the tear down and rebuild scenario. Baseball has a problem. I love the sport. I think it's remarkable. I think it's amazing. But when you have small markets that can't spend the money and big markets that aren't willing to spend the money, something is wrong and it needs to be addressed. Manny Machado, and frankly, I'm a Cubs fan. I wouldn't want him on my team. I want a guy that hustles, but that's a hell of a baseball player. I love Bryce Harper as a Cubs fan, and so would most of you, whatever team you root for. Machado doesn't have a job, Harper doesn't have a job, and J.D. Martinez showed us last year, whatever team goes out and spends some money on these big-time free agents have a real opportunity to reap some serious benefits. Baseball has got to get it figured out. Verlander's right. My source is right. It doesn't add up. Something is fishy here. All right, we're going to turn, hopefully, here on CBS Sports HQ today, tomorrow, soon. We'll break in and tell you that Machado and Harper have jobs. We always keep you up to date on whatever's trending in the world of sports, what you, the fan, need to know. It'd be really nice if we were able to share with you that those guys have a place to play Major League Baseball this upcoming season. When it happens, you'll be the first to know it here on CBS Sports HQ. Before that happens, we're going to talk some other sports, including some college hoops with the best, I would argue, college hoops reporter in the country. Gary Parrish, my colleague, joins me next on Writer's Block. All right, welcome back into New York City and Writer's Block. I'm Bill Reiter. Thanks for hanging out. Speaking of New York City, the best, I would argue, college basketball reporter in the country is in the Big Apple, graciously making some time for us. Gary Parrish joining me across town. Gary, thanks for being here, man.
You're kidding? Thanks for inviting me. It's always good to be here.
All right, so Duke's got the huge comeback last night over Louisville. Zion says afterwards that Coach K told them in the huddle he doesn't coach losers. Has this been the secret to Coach K's success all along, that the other guys have been coaching losers while he's been coaching winners?
Yeah, I think we finally found out how to become the winningest men's basketball coach in history. Just recruit nothing but winners, and then you'll win more often than not. No, I think more than anything, Kay was just trying to motivate those guys because they were not only on the verge of losing, but on the verge of getting humiliated, on national television. I think the television ratings throughout the season have shown that undeniably Duke is the biggest brand in the sport of college basketball. Zion Williamson, the biggest star in the sport. And so anytime they get down, as significantly as they got down in that game, 23 points with 9:08 left on the clock, the even casual sports fans are going to tune in because it's something we haven't seen yet and something we'll probably never see again this season. And then for them to make that remarkable comeback, it was there will be higher stakes games played this season, but there won't be many, if any, more memorable games than Duke overcoming that big of a deficit on the road against, let's remember, not just any team, but a legitimate top 20 team in Louisville, a Louisville team that had beaten North Carolina by 20 points early in the season. To be able to come back on the road and do what they did, it's just a reminder of why Duke is the most talented team in the country and still the favorite to win the national championship.
Gary, Duke got that win in part because of the officials' ability to review a play. It looked like they got it right. Not the case in that LSU-Kentucky game. It's got a lot of folks frustrated. Does college basketball have an officiating problem, or are we just watching too much NFL football and just going off on the officials whenever human error comes into the picture?
Well, last night was not a great night because I'm not going to go so far as to say that it cost Kentucky a win, because if that basket was not allowed at the buzzer, we'd have still gone to overtime, and LSU could have obviously won the game, in the 5 extra minutes. But it did cost, undeniably, Kentucky a chance to go to overtime because Cavell Bigby Williams, his tip-in at the buzzer, it appeared, according to the replays, to be a classic case of basket interference. The issue becomes, and it was interesting to watch it unfold in real time, because the officials go to the monitor and they're looking at the same thing, you know, the 20,000 people inside Rupp Arena are looking at, which is a replay that appears to show basket interference. And I don't think the average fan in the building understood that it doesn't matter what you see as it relates to basket interference. The officials not only aren't looking at that, they're not allowed to look at that. I mean, they're going to see it the same way they see it, and they're probably going to think to themselves, oh man, we messed this up. But they can't do anything about that then. All they could do at that monitor is ensure that the tip-in got off before the buzzer. Once they saw that, and it was clear to see, then the game is over. And John Calipari, I think, made a reasonable point afterward. If we have the ability to go to the monitor and check certain things, why wouldn't you want to check a basket interference call and make sure you get the proper outcome? The counter argument to that is, where do you draw the line on judgment calls? You know, we're going to start reviewing every block charge situation that happens outside of the arc? Are we going to start looking at every no call when a three-point shooter says he's fouled but he wasn't at the buzzer? We're going to go look at that and then maybe reverse it. It is a little bit of a slippery slope, but I can certainly understand why Kentucky fans, the Kentucky coach, were frustrated at how that unfolded, because the officials, quite clearly, they just messed up.
So LSU does get the win. They stun Kentucky. Auburn seems to be finding their groove. Tennessee, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country. When you look at the SEC, Gary, how does it compare in terms of its strength to its past? Are we talking about the best the SEC has been in a generation or more?
It's certainly the best it's been in a while, and it's not by accident. You know, Mike Slive, before he left his office as commissioner of the SEC, while launching the SEC network, begged his university presidents and athletic directors to really invest in men's basketball. They already had arguably the best athletics conference in the country, and certainly the best football conference in the country, but they were really lagging in men's basketball. For whatever reason, there was this thought process by too many schools in that league that, you know, we're not going to be good at both. Let's just make sure we're good at the one we care most about, and that is, with the exception of maybe Kentucky, college football. But Mike Slive made a perfectly reasonable point. Because of the SEC network, all of you have plenty of money. And beyond that, we need, for the SEC network to flourish, we need quality original programming. And the best inventory we could possibly have, because there's only so many football games you can put on, it's men's basketball. So if you've got the right coach, this is what Mike Slive told university president, do whatever you got to do to keep him, and then give him all the resources to be successful. If you don't have the right coach, fire the guy you got, go get the right coach. Invest in your facilities, increase recruiting budgets, charter everything. Make sure you're running a first-class basketball program from a money perspective, and the success should follow. So what did we see? Auburn go out and bring in an accomplished coach like Bruce Pearl. Tennessee go out, bring in an accomplished coach like Rick Barnes. Alabama go out, bring in an accomplished coach like Avery Johnson. Conzo Martin comes in the league. Ben Howland comes in the league. Frank Martin comes in the league. I mean, we're talking about Final Four coach after Final Four coach, and it should be no surprise to anybody that finally the SEC looks like, if not the best basketball league in the country, certainly one of the best basketball leagues in the country.
So the SEC on the rise. I'm curious your take on the Big Ten. Penn State just beat Michigan. Maryland takes down Purdue. From your vantage point, Gary, is the Big Ten overrated or just very, very deep?
I think very deep and very, a parity has seeped into the league. I do think Michigan and Michigan State are probably a step above everybody else in that league, but it's not a significant step. And, we saw it on Tuesday night. Michigan goes to Penn State, and yeah, they got down early, and yes, they lost John Beilein, but still, that was the first-place team in the Big Ten losing to the last-place team in the Big Ten. But let's talk about the last-place team in the Big Ten just for a second. That's Penn State. Understand, they're just 2-11 in the league. They were 1-11 before that win over Michigan. That's not good. I'm not going to try to pretend it is. But they're still top 60 at KenPom, which is the most widely respected algorithm that ranks college basketball teams. Again, top 60 in the country, last place in the Big Ten. So what that tells me is, yeah, there are great teams and then good teams and then maybe some mediocre teams. But there's really no easy place in that league to go get a win. I think Penn State showed that last night. That's a Penn State team that's probably going to finish last in the Big Ten, but already has a win over Virginia Tech in their home building and they got the win over Michigan last night. That's 2 wins over top 20 teams. When your last place team can beat top 20 teams, then your last place team isn't that bad.
All right, Gary, last question for you. We're creeping up on March. It's right around the corner, so not too early to ask you about some intriguing non-Power 5 teams. There might be a group or two we're talking about a month from now. Anybody that we should have our eye on that you have your eye on?
Nevada and Gonzaga. I mean, they're both operating at a high major level, but they come from, for lack of a better word, mid-major conferences. Gonzaga with the West Coast Conference affiliation, Nevada in the Mountain West Conference. I was just in Reno over the weekend for Nevada's blowout win over New Mexico, and I will tell you, that team is terrific. They are old, they are accomplished, they are talented. They remind me a lot of the 2008 Memphis team. Everybody remembers Derrick Rose, but what made that team really go, beyond Derrick Rose, was they had 22, 23, in some cases 24-year-olds on that team. They weren't all McDonald's All-Americans. They were just very good and experienced college basketball players. And then John Calipari brought in that one-and-done star in Derrick Rose and took it all the way to the within seconds of a national championship. I'm not pretending that there's a Derrick Rose on this team, but the Martin twins and Jordan Caroline, they remind me a lot of Chris Douglas Roberts, Antonio Anderson, Robert Dozier, Joey Dorsey, experienced college basketball players who might not spend 10 years or even a year in the NBA, but man, they can really wreck people at this level. Nevada is as good as anybody in this country. They're going to play, I would assume, deep into the NCAA tournament. I don't think they lose again until the NCAA tournament. And if you told me that when we're at the Final Four in Minneapolis, that Eric Musselman and his team, or Mark Few and his Gonzaga team, were right there with us, that would not surprise me in the least. Those are 2 high-level basketball teams operating outside of the normal power structure of the sport.
Gary Parrish, you are a good man and a great guest, and we appreciate you, buddy. Let's have you on again as soon as we can.
Whenever you want me, I'm here for you. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Gary. Love Gary Parrish. What a great guy. Love the insight. Really good stuff. And we've got a little more show for you before we turn things over to CBS Sports HQ down in Fort Lauderdale, Sports Line, 45 minutes from now, somewhere in that range, including those of you like me like to put a little money down. Where is Antonio Brown going to end up? Like with everything in America, you can place a wager on that very question, and we'll get into the options and the good ones here in a minute. All right, welcome back into the show in New York City. I'm Bill Reiter. This is Reiter's Block, and congratulations, Chiefs and Chargers fans. Some good news. John Elway has brought in Joe Flacco to be the Denver Broncos quarterback next year. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the move, but forget what I think. Let's see what the numbers have to say. Let's go inside the numbers on the Broncos' newest and latest quarterback. We start with the number 16. In the trade, the Ravens will take a $16 million dead cap hit. And though the Broncos will likely rework Flacco's contract, the quarterback's base salary is $63 million over the next 3 years. Money well spent, John Elway. Good job. That's sarcasm. How about the number 15? Flacco has played, to be fair, in 15 playoff games. That is the 4th most by an active quarterback in the NFL, only behind Tom Brady, pretty good. Ben Roethlisberger, pretty good. Aaron Rodgers, pretty good. So he's in good company there. Next up on Inside the Numbers, 287 and the number 3. In Flacco's shining moment of his career, winning Super Bowl MVP, he threw for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns with not a single pick en route to the Ravens' 34-31 win over the Niners. He was electric that entire postseason, did not have a single interception on their run to that Super Bowl championship. How about the number 70? In that run, Flacco knocked off Denver, his new team, 38-35, in the divisional round of the postseason, commonly referred to as the Mile High Miracle. Flacco threw a 70-yard touchdown with 30 seconds left to force overtime. 38,245, one of the bigger numbers we've had here on Inside the Numbers in a while. New Broncos QB Joe Flacco has the most passing yards at 38,245 by any player to never make a Pro Bowl. He also threw 212 touchdowns over that span, which is the most touchdowns thrown by any player not to make a Pro Bowl. And finally, 6.35 over the last 4 seasons. Flacco's averaged just 6.35 yards per attempt. That is the lowest mark in the league by quarterbacks with more than 1,000 attempts in that span. Reportedly not a very expensive decision by John Elway, who runs football operations for his former team, the Denver Broncos. It'll be a mid-round pick, is the report from ESPN's Adam Schefter. But Joe Flacco does not feel like the solution and seems to increase the likelihood that John Elway's success, including the Super Bowl as a front office guy, had a lot more to do with a guy named Peyton Manning and a lot less to do with Elway's own football acumen in the front office. Speaking of football acumen, it's going to take some pretty interesting decision-making for whichever GM and owner and organization decides they want to bring in the mercurial, the talented Antonio Brown. Now, we've had AB on the show here before, and he was great. It's one of the best interviews we've done on Reiter's Block. Could not have been more likable, but he also gave us what we wanted, right? He came on, it was really cool. It's not like he quit on the show, like he quit on his team. And it's an interesting question mark, who's going to sign him and who should sign him? And the odds that are out there, I think, reflect the right kind of market for Antonio Brown. For me, I'm not signing AB if I'm the Bears or the Chargers or the Chiefs, if I'm an organization that's already in good shape and has a lot to lose with the wrong guy coming in and mess with my locker room. But if I've got to prove something, young coach, or keep my job, guy on the hot seat, maybe AB makes sense. And that's where you see the Cardinals and the Packers really interesting. First-year head coaches in each case with the pressure to live up to the hype of their offensive excellence. Young guys in the McVay mold. The Dolphins are interesting. I mean, my goodness, John Gruden's got to do something that feels like the right move after tearing down the Raiders in his first year as part of his $100 million deal. I think the Niners are really, really interesting. The Colts, and I don't know if I'm the Colts, if AB's the guy, but pairing with Andrew Luck would be fascinating. But here's the one that jumps out, and you saw it there. The Cleveland Browns at 12-1. I don't personally love the Kareem Hunt decision for all the reasons that are obvious, but John Dorsey's been known when he was the GM in Kansas City and now in Cleveland to value talent, to give guys what he'll tell you are second chances that they deserve. And if you can bring in somebody who's got the history that Kareem Hunt has, the reason Kareem Hunt not in Kansas City is the video we saw of his incident with a young woman, then certainly you're going to feel comfortable giving a guy a second chance who let down on his team. And while I don't love a guy not performing for the guys that he goes to war with, that is not a great Pittsburgh Steelers culture. Le'Veon Bell tells the story. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger throw some guys under the bus. So you could certainly, if you're John Dorsey, look at AB and say, super talented. I've got a really interesting football team. And you know what? Whatever went on in Pittsburgh wasn't his fault. Let's bring him into our culture. And what a storyline it would be. I would love to see the Browns with Antonio Brown. Be really, really interesting. Thank you to Gary Parrish for being on the program. Thank you for watching the show. Reiter's Block every day during the week, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific. I'm with you tomorrow, and then starting Friday and next week, Eric Casillas is going to take over. I got a little vacation coming up. We're back tomorrow. Hope you're back with us. Thanks for hanging out. CBS Sports HQ from Fort Lauderdale, Florida continues right now.